Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Mentor, a live workshop series presented by Dutch Uncles. In our weekly live series, Mentor, we invite industry veterans and who have the knowledge and experience to discuss topics that are apt and relevant to the early stage and millennial investors. I also thank our audience who have joined us from across four different platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. First, let me start off by asking you some questions, some basic questions. Are you someone who finds it really difficult to save money on one hand and go with the easygoing expenses on the other? Or does it really bother you if you are not able to map your savings on one hand and investments according to a fixed common goal? Or do you know that whatever money you have in your account right now will be some half or even less than that in a few years' time? Well, these questions will continue to linger in your minds. But in spite of having so many financial options to choose from, what if I say that you have one common answer to all these questions? It is a goal based investment plan. Yes, because when your investments are not linked to any common goal, then what happens is that it becomes random and chaotic, so much so that your even a basic urge to invest, it starts fading away. Then what is the use of it, right? So I hope you can relate to whatever I'm saying. Then, to really help you and guide you with this wealth creation journey, we have with us Mr. Dilip Shenoy, who is the founder of Moneytree Financial Services. Mr. Shenoy has over 21 years of experience as a financial coach. Welcome to our show, sir. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Abhinash. Thank you. It's my pleasure too.
Thank you so much, sir. Without further ado, I'd request Mr. Shinoy to kindly take over and initiate the workshop. I'd also request our audience to listen to the presentation very carefully and come up with questions, which Mr. Shinoy will be answering after our live session. So over to you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Abhilash. Just a brief introduction about myself. I have been in this wealth management industry for almost 21 years now. I have worked with banks like HSBC and ICICI. Moneytree is something which I started 7 years ago, rather. And the next half an hour is something which I will try and keep it as interesting as possible, because finance is a very dry subject, and I'll try and the challenge is always, especially this is basically a 4 o'clock session, and in our trainings we used to call it the graveyard session. So it's very difficult for somebody to be attentive. So here goes. Wish me all the best. I'll just share the screen, Abhilash.
Yes, sir, sure.
Are you able to view? Is it full screen, Abhilash?
Yes, yes, sir, it's
Great,
visible now.
great. So the wealth management journey is a journey in itself, and what we all like to do is explore the world, and some of us like to explore new food. So what I'll try and do is, the financial aspect, I will try and compare it with a journey. What everyone across age, across borders, across caste, creed, sex, they actually like to do is travel, right? We will all want to see various people, witness various cultures, experience food, weather, so on and so forth, right? So what is it that we do when we set off on a journey, or let's say
Hello, sir. Sorry to interrupt you.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir, can you please display the slides on full screen?
All right, just give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Am Am I? Is this visible now?
No. Uh, no, sir. You can. I think you can go back to the previous one.
All right.
Yes, that's fine.
All right. So, life is a journey, and so is wealth creation. So, when you set off on a journey, what you do is you first decide on what destination you would want to go, right? So, uh, I would typically look at investing very much similar to that of planning a vacation. So, the first thing that we do is we decide which destination that we would like to go to. Then we decide the mode of transport that will take us there. The mode of transport can be anything, and the parameters on which you would probably decide the mode of transport is many. For instance, there is convenience, there is cost, there is the fastest mode of transport. Not necessary that the fastest is the safest mode of transport, personal preferences, etc., etc. So, similarly, before you invest, understand and evaluate all. What is very important is you need to plan your investment in detail and your long trip, right? So, what I will now capture is I have and put it as a 6 steps process. The wealth management or the wealth creation journey is a 6 step process, and there are not many more slides. Just bear with me on this one. So before we go into the planning bit, let's have a brief history about us, about India. So today, India's gross savings rate is close to about 31.4%. That's the latest updated 2020 figures. Compare this to 1954, when India was just independent from the British. We were not a very rich country, and that also reflected in the households. Obviously, a country can be rich when the population itself is very productive, and these savings translate into investments in industry and so on. So in 1954, India's gross savings rate was around 7.9%, right? So savings rate as a percentage of GDP is 30.2. So there's a difference between the gross savings rate mentioned up there and savings rate as a percentage of GDP. Where is India ranked today? India is ranked 8th, which is a very good, we are in the top 10. Compare that to Singapore, which ranks number 1 at 40%. What it says is the savings, if you're taking home 100 rupees post your expenses, you have roughly about 40 rupees left to save, right? In India, what are the options that were there? So there was these traditional options like fixed deposits, small savings, post office, national savings certificate. People used to get into guaranteed products and insurance, money back schemes, endowment plans, real estate for those who could afford it, gold again for those who could afford it, right? So this is basically what our traditional savings pattern has been, and let's now try and look at what are the options available today, right? So before you get into the product aspect, this is what you should probably need to do. So the step one is you need to know yourself, right? So uh, why what I mean by this, in wealth management parlance, you have something like a human life cycle and you have a wealth cycle. So human life cycle would essentially mean, if you bucket the age categories, there's somebody who is into early career, 25 to 30 age. 30 to 40 is an age where typically you get married. Then if your spouse is working spouse, then you have double disposable income, your lifestyle changes. 40 to 50 is mostly when you are at the peak of your career, mid career. And 50 to 60 is when you're close to, very very much close to retirement, right? And then comes retirement, that is anywhere between 50 to 60. One caveat here is, today the career spans have shrunk. There was a time when people in government used to retire at age 60 or 58, but in private nowadays, you're seeing people take an early retirement. There is also a wealth cycle, which actually, if you superimpose it on the life cycle. So initially the age category between 25 and 30, I remember my first salary that I got. I went and purchased a phone, right? So savings was something which is not a priority at this age. Between 25 and 30, you would like to spend everything that you earn. The wealth cycle typically would depend on wealth creation. You can only create wealth when you have some wealth, which means you have some savings. So between 25 to 35 is a time when you're actually trying to save up a little. Then, like I said, if you get married and you have double income, or you get your promotions, you're doing well, you're settled in your profession, comes the wealth creation stage. Around 40, 50 comes the wealth accumulation stage. Around 50 to 60 and retirement comes the wealth preservation stage. And finally, you have the wealth distribution and succession planning, right? So you cannot take your wealth along with you when you leave this planet. You have to decide to whom and to what extent will you pass this on as a legacy. There is also a very important cycle which I would believe is best avoided. This is the credit cycle. In Hindi, you say "udar ki zindagi." So, if you again look at it from the human life cycle perspective, from 25 to 30, I will relate again to myself. I bought a bike on a bike loan. Then from 30 to 40, obviously, I got married at 29. Around 30, 31, I bought a home with a home loan. Then I bought a car with a car loan. Now I have a son who is probably in the 10th standard. Would again, we would probably need to take a loan if there is a higher education requirement. So if you look at it, most of the times we are into the cycle of borrowing. It is best avoided, but sometimes you have no options, right? So there are now innovative products. For example, you have a home saver product in home loans, which is more like an OD account, helps you save interest costs. So maybe you should opt for those innovative products. Know your risk profile. I think risk profile is something which is ever evolving. There are many risk profiling questionnaires which are available on the internet. You just have to attempt them. It basically is again helping you know yourself.
Hello, sir. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah,
Your slides are not getting changed. So can you
I
please?
I haven't changed. I haven't changed. I'm still on
Okay,
step
okay,
one. I'm also still on step one.
okay, sir. And sir, can you just keep it on full screen, please? Try it once again.
Just let me do that. So
Yes.
I'm going to your options. So do I select the entire screen or
Yes, yes.
okay? No, I don't think I'm able to do that
Okay, sir. Then that's all right.
because when I'm seeing entire screen, it's only showing the screen that I'm on when it.
Right, right. Also, you can also press F5 when you're on the PowerPoint screen.
Is it full now? I mean, is it the
No,
full
sir. Your
screen?
slides are not. No, sir. Your slides are not visible yet. Yes, it is visible. Um, yes. Can you now press F5?
Is it visible now? I think there's a lag. I'll wait.
Okay. Okay.
Is it visible now? Is it full screen?
Yes, so your screen is visible, but your slides are not visible as full screen. So I'd
Okay,
request you if you can press F5.
I just did that.
Okay, okay, okay. All right.
So what I can do is that's the maximum is possible, right?
Yes.
Fair enough.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So are you telling me you didn't get to see these slides, right?
Yes,
Earlier?
yes,
All right.
yes,
Okay. Okay.
yes.
Fair enough. So you're able to view step one now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, it's visible now.
All right,
Sorry
great.
for the interruption.
Okay,
Please continue.
no, no issues, no issues. So yeah, so I was at the point where in helping you understand your own self, it's very important that you take a risk questionnaire. It typically helps you understand how much you understand financial products. How would you react to certain scenarios like market changes and so on? And at the end of a risk profiling questionnaire, you will have grading. Basically, it will depend on what are the options that you have chosen. This will help you categorize yourself, whether you are a conservative investor, whether you are a moderate or an aggressive investor. So these are the first steps that you do go through or understand before you start investing. Know your balance sheet. So obviously, what does this mean is what are the assets and liabilities that you have? Where are your assets currently deployed? Are you over leveraged, and so on and so forth, right? So get into the practice of maintaining your balance sheet. Maybe you can do it once in 2 years. Finally, what is very important is, like Abhilash was mentioning, for the millennials, what you need to really, really start early in your career is distinguish between needs and wants, right? So know what you need and know what you want, right? So today, if I actually want perhaps the most expensive car, but is it necessary? That's not, right? So what I need is very, very important. These are the things which you cannot do away with. What you want is something which you can do away with. Maybe postpone it to a future uh, event. So once you understand yourself, you move to the second step. uh, I always tell my clients, you should invest your time before you invest your money. So start with a budgeting exercise. Whatever gets measured gets treasured, like a wise person had put it earlier. So a budgeting exercise is something like, what are your expenses, right? And I don't want you to get into detail. You can just, perhaps look at a quarter's expenses. And today, fortunately, all of us post COVID, we have moved on to the digital space. We are using Google Pay, or we are swiping cards, or we are making payments online. So if you just pull out your bank statement, you will have the details of all your expenses. So our ratio of maybe digital expenses or monetized expenses, 90% of our expenses are non-cash, and 10% perhaps as cash. So it becomes easier to maintain a simple balance sheet with income and expenses. Uh, Read up on a lot of content, but don't get too much of information. Also, too much of information can sometimes lead to information overload, and can also make you confused, and thus decision making, you just procrastinate on the decision making bit, right? If possible, like you always, when we go to a new place, we hire a tour guide, who can show you the local areas, that the famous restaurant, or the famous food, the famous site, etc., etc. It is best that you hire a financial consultant to guide you through this journey, right? Later on, once you get comfortable with the various products, maybe then you can go solo. uh, Evaluate the alternatives. Like I said, there are many alternatives today. Earlier, there used to be only the traditional fixed deposits. So we have many, many alternatives, right from equity, direct equity, mutual funds, PMSs, private equity, structured notes, derivatives, and so on, right? But avoid the uncharted territories or paths. For example, there's a lot of talk today about cryptocurrency and so on. Or when there are new products in the market, sometimes it can be a Ponzi scheme, a bogus Ponzi scheme. When it's too good to be true, when somebody tells you you can get 25% guaranteed return, your radar should be up. You should avoid these products, and especially if they are unregulated by any regulator in that particular product. And of course, we always will make mistakes. Do not shy away from making mistakes, but let them not cost you a great deal. And of course, speak to people around you, learn from their mistakes. You will obviously have seniors or colleagues or brothers and sisters or relatives that you can speak to, right? So step two, like I said, is you need to invest your time before you invest that first rupee. You should know what you are actually getting into. I'll move to the next slide. Step three is identifying the goals. What is very, very important is you should identify your various milestones in life. It will evolve as your wealth cycle and your age cycle evolves, right? It is very, very challenging and near to impossible to really look beyond a long term horizon. So you should categorize the time horizon into short term. A short term is basically anywhere between 6 months to a year's time. A medium term, which is anywhere between a year and 3 years, and long term is 5 years and beyond, right? So the nearer term goals are the most easiest to be identified. The medium term may be a certain amount of challenge. Medium term goals can be something like buying a car, international travel, repairs at home, etc. Long term goals typically would be children's education, higher education, corpus planning, retirement, and so on. So this will come at a later part of our age, but it's a very important. And today, we know how much we spend on education, and the inflation in India in education sector is perhaps one of the highest in the world. Okay, what you then need to do is, once you've identified these goals, you need to calculate the approximate values that you would require. So for example, if you need to have a contingency fund, like I said, the near term horizon is the most easiest to calculate and to provision for. So as a global financial planning practice, what you need to do is, whatever is your monthly expense, multiply it by 6 times or 10 times, and park this money somewhere which is safe, which is liquid, where you can liquidate it within a day or two, and the money is there for in your account for withdrawal. So we've all been through this COVID experience where people had medical emergencies. It's always important to have a good contingency fund, a medical emergency fund as well, right? Then comes the medium term. You need to these are the two, that is short term and medium term. Any horizon which is below 5 years, primarily you need to avoid riskier products like equity. And long term goals like 5 years and above is something where you can invest into equity, provided you know what you're doing. Again, like I said, come back to calculating the present value, add an inflation to it, because your long-term goals right now, you may evaluate it at present value, but what you need to know, or what you need to keep in mind, is that inflation will inflate the present value to a future value, right? So simply put, if in India we have around 7% inflation, typically within 9 to 10 years, your expenses would double. Uh, Fulfill the nearer and easier goals first. Like I said, it's easier to do that, but start early for long term. Do not neglect your long term. For those who are working, you have an EPF component being cut from your salary. Now, this is supposedly for your retirement, right? So that small component is something which you can also start investing for yourself out of your organization. Or even if you're a businessman or a proprietor or an entrepreneur, you should get into the habit of starting something for your retirement at an early stage. Very, very important is the power of compounding. It's called the eighth wonder. There is a rule of 72, which if you read up on the internet, you will get what I'm trying to say. So if you have to calculate in what time will your money double, so 72 divided by the return that you're expecting is the time it will take. The answer is, for example, if your FD is giving you a fixed deposit is giving you post-tax 6%, typically an FD doubles in 12 years. That is 72 divided by 6. If you're investing in equity on a conservative side, you're expecting a 12% post-tax return. So 72 divided by 12 in 6 years, twice as fast will your money double. So that's the difference between the power of compounding. Then comes the step four, right? This is a very critical step. The first three, we are not even looking at the products. But then when you have to evaluate options, like I said, today there is too much available in the market. And trust me, the finance world will keep evolving. And it is only going to make your task a little challenging, right? So how can you make it a little easier, right? So first and foremost, whenever you decide to invest, be clear in your mind whether you're looking at a wealth preservation objective or you're looking at a wealth creation objective. There is no other third objective, in my opinion. It's either you want to save your principal amount, that is, for example, if you have saved 100 or invested 100, you'd rather get your 100 back or than take a risk. Maybe that 100 can give you 102 or 103, but you don't want to take that risk. And wealth creation is you're okay to take the risk and let the money grow, right? So therefore equity can be an option. uh, Understand whether the product that you're getting into is simple or complicated, right? So just to give an example, a fixed deposit is for so easy for anyone to understand, for a common man, that is. And compared to structured notes or derivatives, it's very much complicated as a product itself. So start with the simple products first. Once you get the experience, then you can move on to much more evolved products. Understand whether you're getting into regulated or unregulated products. It's better to get into products which are time tested, which are more evolved and matured over the time, right? Liquidity is one of the most important parameters. We will be coming to that in some time. So understand how liquid are your investments. If you've given your money to your friend, obviously you give it with the promise that he may uh, return it back to you in 10 days, 20 days, and so on. It's a different question whether he actually returns it. But liquidity is one of the very important parameters. Cash is king, as they rightly say in the finance world, right? Look at whether the fund that you're getting into or the product that you're getting into is open-ended or closed-ended, or if there is any lock-in. You also look at the return aspect, which is is the return fixed or is it flexible or variable? Whether there is any guaranteed return or not guaranteed return. This typically would mean some of the insurance products. You don't have anything guaranteed outside of insurance. Risk, we will come to it. That's the reason I have marked it in red. The next slide typically covers all types of risks. Cost is something which today's day and age everybody is aware of. We all like to reduce our. That's why we shop in Amazon or on Flipkart or a lot of these pharmacy online pharmacy sites which are there. Same thing, you would like to do away with the middlemen and their charges. So cost is also a very important aspect. Earlier, just to give an example, in mutual funds, there used to be entry loads, which the regulator has done away with. The entry load could range between 1 to 2%. Then there is management fee, which is when you are invested in the product, there is a management fee that is charged. At exit, you may have an exit fee. Again, another important parameter for you to evaluate is taxation. EEE is nothing but exempt, exempt, exempt. So exempt at entry stage, exempt at income earning stage, exempt at exit stage. So there are various income tax implications. So there are some products which are exempt at all the point of time. When you invest, you get an exemption under section 80C. When you stay invested, the income that is earned is tax free. And when you exit also, there is no tax implication. So the only product I feel right now is public provident fund. It helps you save tax when you invest in it. It gives you tax free income when you are invested, and when you exit, when you take out money, also it's tax free. So a public provident fund is perhaps one of the products. Currently 7.1% is the rate. A 7.1% tax free rate is as good as a 10% taxable rate if you are in a 30% tax slab. So a PPF is a must have by this very understanding. Again, the mode of investing. We are now in a digital age. Gone are those days when you used to have shares in paper form. Now dematerialization is a must as per the regulator. Uh, Depends on whether you're into physical assets as well or financial assets. Best is to have it in digital mode. And minimum corpus is also a determination whether you need to get into that product or not. For example, PMSs, portfolio management services, the minimum ticket size is 50 lakhs. Private equity is a higher ticket size, is an important factor. We move to the next slide. Like I said, I would like to focus more here. Risk and return, they are they go hand in hand. So higher the risk, higher the return; lower the risk, lower the return, right? So what are these various types of risks? You have the market risk. Market is nothing but a place where buyers and sellers meet. It's more sentiment driven. Then you have something like a credit risk, where you've lent your money to a friend and is not returned it back, becomes a defaulter. Similarly, there are organizations which borrow. There is a credit rating which every organization has. So it starts from AAA rated to something like a junk bond, right? So you can read up on the internet on this, understand whether you're investing into a safe investment product in terms of credit standing. Sovereign funds or risk are the risk-free funds. That is, the government borrowing is the assumed to be a risk-free borrowing, and they are the benchmark rates actually. Interest rate risks, if you get into bond markets and you deal in trading component of the bond markets, it will be subject to interest rate movements. The price of a bond goes down if interest rate goes up, and the price of a bond goes up. So there's an inverse relationship when the interest rate goes down. Liquidity risk, I'm sure some of you must have read in the newspapers or online about the Franklin Templeton issue which happened during COVID. That was a event risk where people who had invested in bonds, all of them suddenly became net sellers, and the funds that Franklin was invested in was bleeding. This happened purely because of COVID. Obviously, the equity markets, everybody is in it with the understanding that there is risk to principal. So the equity markets corrected by 40%. But in a bond market, you essentially do not want your principal to erode. Therefore, you had seen that step taken by Franklin India of winding up those schemes. So there was no further transactions, whether buy or sell, that was allowed. So that's called a liquidity risk. There was no credit risk at that point of time. Concentration risk, the first four risks are basically your financial risks. The other ones are more related to yourself and the macros around you. Concentration risk is when you put all your eggs in one basket. You're not diversifying. That's a huge risk to take. Policy related risk is essentially government policies, internal policies, domestic policies, international policies. At the moment, you're seeing a lot of globalization, negative globalization that's happening. Globalization is no longer a positive word. You're seeing countries becoming very closely knit. They are shutting shop or shutting doors for migrant workers. They are getting into trade blocks, and which has more of a geopolitical implication as well, right? Then you have technology risk. Automation and artificial intelligence, as per a very recent report, is going to make a lot of people on this planet unemployed or underemployed, right? Earlier also I had mentioned that career spans are shrinking. There is no longer the time that people retire at age 58 or 60, right? So this is one risk which is very, very important. The invisible risk is a killer. it is nothing but inflation. We know what price of petrol today is, and therefore, inflation erodes into your purchasing power. And because it's invisible, it's a very, very dangerous one. You need to really keep this in tab. Finally, risk of early death. If you're a sole earning member in your family, you have children, you have liabilities, you have home loans, a risk of early death, all these liabilities and all your children's future goals, etc., need to be taken care of. And risk of living too long, so we do not have, if you're working in the private sector, you do not have pension, unlike for those who have work in government or semi-government sectors, PSUs, who have pension. So risk of living too long. The average life expectancy in India today for men is assumed to be 75%, 75 years rather, and for women it is about 80 years. So these are the risks which you have to be very, very mindful of when you're investing, because this is going to help you take decisions, right? And decisions like selecting the best vehicle for you, or the most apt vehicle for the journey, right? So if you're setting out on a journey, on a road trip, obviously you're getting into a vehicle which you can drive, which you're comfortable with, which you understand, right? If you're not a pilot, I'm sure you're not going to fly a plane to the journey or to the destination. Therefore, keep it simple. Get into things which you are comfortable with. To simply put, for your short and medium term destinations, get into wealth preservation. Do not play with your capital. For your longer term destinations, get into wealth creation. Otherwise, what happens is, I've seen this in the banking industry. People tend to renew their fixed deposits year after year, year after year, and then they compare it with some friend's equity portfolio, and then they realize that if they had invested 10 years ago in an equity, that thing would have multiplied faster, right? So then you realize, so it is very, very essential, in my opinion, to get the right time frame. It is a challenge for all investors to get a right time frame for their monies. And opportunity loss is something which you will have, which you'll regret later on. And like I said, avoid concentration risk. Today is a day and age of having a multi-asset, multi-market allocation. By multi-market, I mean, today you also have option to invest apart from the domestic equity market, just as a hedge. There can be certain things which can be very much localized event for India, like an India-Pakistan war, something which may get down the Indian stock market, or some financial fraud. So therefore, it is very important that you also have investment into equities. You can do this via mutual funds. There are fund of funds which are the offshore funds. That's how you can perhaps diversify your risk. Assign weights to each asset class. The best way you can avoid concentration risk is, if in your portfolio, if you have 100 rupees and you're parking, let's say 5 rupees in each portfolio, or in each asset class, or in each subtype, that's a very good allocation. So essentially what it means, that you will need to have 20 different types of asset classes, right? So that's a good enough diversification. DEG, nothing but debt to equity and gold. So mostly your financial portfolio will have bonds, equity and gold, and you need to decide what can be the allocation. As a guiding principle in the financial planning world, 100 minus your age, or 120 minus your age, is what you should invest in fixed income, right? So if, for instance, if you're 30 years of age, and if you have, let's say, 10 lakhs, 3 lakhs is something which you should be investing in fixed income. 7 lakhs is something which you can invest in growth asset classes. In terms of insurance, have adequate life, health, property, and professional indemnity insurance, but never mix your insurance and investments. There is a cost. One of the parameters that we looked at was cost. Some of the traditional plans of insurances are very expensive. You may not realize it, but the brokerages paid out for traditional plans is anywhere in the vicinity of 30-40%. They do not end up making great returns. They are very much a traditional way of investing. So do not mix your insurance and investments. A term life insurance is something which you need to have. I have come across people who buy expensive cars, and just because it is mandatory to have a car insurance, they will definitely opt for it. But the valuable people inside the car do not themselves have insurance, right? So do not make that mistake. There is a human life value for yourself. Many other people's dreams are linked to your earning potential. Uh, Finally, be patient and focus on real return. Enjoy the ride. Real return is something which is post tax, post inflation, right? So do not get swayed away by seeing a 20% return or 7% FD. What you need to always evaluate is what is the cost in terms of investing, what is the taxation, that will be the implication, and what are other costs, and importantly, what relation. So real return is nothing but uh, what actually you are making, right? Like it is said in by a Japanese proverb, money grows on the tree of persistence. So in the journey of wealth creation, you need to be persistent, you need to be at it at all given points of time. Finally, the last step, which is the step 6, if you set out on a road journey, obviously the car needs to be checked periodically in the dashboard for what is the fuel in the car. You will get down, check how much air pressure are in the tires, etc., etc. The same thing is with your own portfolio, your investments. You need to periodically have a review. It helps to have somebody else review your portfolio, like a financial coach or an advisor, so that he can give a third perspective. You need to monitor it. I am not saying you need to monitor it daily. Your long term investments are best suited that you monitor it maybe after a year or so, and rebalance your portfolio, right? Whenever given the chance, try and rebalance your portfolio, try and plow back profits into safer asset classes if your exposure to growth asset classes is on the highest side. Don't get emotional with investments. Like I said, we all tend to make mistakes. We are human beings. If you made a wrong choice, take the call and exit. Avoid sentiments like greed, fear, and most importantly, avoid all the noise. Today we are living in a digital world. We get a lot of WhatsApp forwards, so there are vested interests involved. Make your own call, take your own decision, and avoid all the noise that is around you. Ensure that all your investments have nominations. Very, very important to have nominations on your investments. Share your information, share your plan, share your investments with your spouse or your parents, and keep a copy with them for safe record. This is very, very important. And at any given stage of life, you need to have a written will in place. Obviously, this sets in when you have accumulated assets, and more so importantly, if you have physical assets. Some people do invest in gold coins. Some people have multiple assets, multiple homes across. So very, very important to have a will in place. It also helps in succession planning. So just to summarize whatever I have spoken about, your wealth management or your goal based investment has typically 6 steps in it, right? So first and foremost, understand how much fuel you have in your car before you enter into a journey. Therefore, you need to take a budgeting exercise. You need to ensure that you meet a threshold of at least 30% of your money as savings. Distinguish between your needs and your wants, right? Do a risk profiling. Attempt a risk profiling questionnaire. It gives you an insight about how you're going to react to certain scenarios in the market.
Hello,
Your
sir.
understand, yeah,
Hello, sir. Sorry, so sorry for the interruption, but we are running short of time.
sure.
So, yes. So like we would
This
like to
is
start. Yes,
So that was the last slide, any which ways. So, like you have this announcement on Ola, your destination has arrived. Thank you.
yes.
And time for question and answers.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Shenoy. It was really a pleasure to listen to you live. And also, like I, as a millennial, could also collect, had many takeaways. I'm sure our audience, as they are millennials and who really want to enter in the stock market and they would really want to invest somewhere, they also have many practical takeaways. Some of the major takeaways that I found was that there is always this importance of distinguishing between want and need, and also there is also an importance of diversification, and you covered it all. So without much without wasting any more time, let us straight away go to the question answers which have come from our live audience. So this is a question received from Mohit. Thank you, Mohit, for the question. So he asks, I am with my first job wanting to invest, but there is a fear of losing out money and way to go with risks ahead. If you can help me with some risk management plans that I need to take care. Over to
Okay.
you.
Yep. So what this person needs to essentially do is, like I said, it's very easy to identify your short-term goals. So whatever are your short-term expenses, I know COVID has had an event where people have lost jobs or people have reduced salaries to take away with. So it is important now. There's a pre-COVID. In pre-COVID, we used to say 6 to 10 months should be your contingency planning. But depending on the area or that you work, or if you're in business or profession, the cycles would be different. So first, meet the short-term goals, because it shouldn't happen that once you've committed into an investment into the long term and there is a requirement, you dip into that long-term investment, and what if the market is not favorable, right? So you'll end up booking a loss. So as a retail investor, especially when you're young and you're starting, take small steps. The vehicle that best suits us is something called a systematic investment plan. Obviously, you start with tax planning. When you first get your salary, your HR will send you a link saying, please declare your investments for the year. So ELSS is one of the best options. You can invest into ELSS in a SIP form. So what a SIP means is there is an auto debit to your savings bank account of a small amount. It can be anywhere from 1,000 and upwards, and do that. And once you get comfortable, once you have seen 2 cycles of growth and 2 cycles of depression, 2 bull cycles or 2 bearish cycles, you will know what it means and what the journey is. It's nothing but a roller coaster ride, and there is no expert in this completely. So if somebody's telling you he's the expert and he knows where the markets will open tomorrow, is lying. So
Yes,
my
exactly.
to summarize, take small steps. First, get into the wealth preservation. Get your next 1, 2, 3 years expenses in your kitty safe. Then start, investing into riskier asset classes in a staggered manner.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Shenoy. So we are moving to our second question, which is by a LinkedIn user. She asks, there is always a dilemma regarding the duration of my investments. I want to have some clarity on this.
So what is very important is, you need to try as much as possible map your investment vehicle to the time horizon, right? So I wouldn't so for instance, if somebody is in the age bracket 30, 35, or I can give you my example. My son is in the 10th now, and he has higher education corpus outflow which will be coming in another 2, 3 years time, right? So 2, 3 years is a very small time frame to put your money in equity. So that makes it very simple for you to say, okay, equity is not an option. I'll probably park it into a fixed deposit or a bond fund. But if your time horizon is on the higher side, right? So what is very, very essential is you need to draw a timeline somewhere. And these are the major outflows. You may have the best of plans, but try and get it as practical as can be, and then see whatever is the investment surplus and bucket your investments in various time horizons. For instance, if you have 100 rupees, invest say 50 rupees for the short term, invest say 20, 30 rupees for the medium term, and invest 10, 20 rupees for the long term, right? Just a disclaimer, this is not a piece of advice. It is just that, I'm just guiding you. There cannot be one template that fits all, right? Depends on a whole lot of other factors, like what is your balance sheet, what is your lifestyle inflation is something which is very, very critical, right? Today, lifestyle that we lead is actually draining us.
Yes, 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 definitely. Thank you so much. We would like to move to our third question, which is by a Facebook user, Amrit, I guess. Yes. Thank you, Amrit, for your question. So there is So much information on the internet regarding investments, wealth management, financial needs, etc. And it is usually very confusing. How do you suggest that one can refine this information and make the most out of it?
Uh, See what I would, here I can probably try and explain it with something like a cricket, right? Everybody understands and follows cricket. So at the start of Sachin's career, he had a coach. He had Mr. Achrekar who could probably guide him, right? So when you start off playing in the investment world, which is like playing cricket, it's best that you start off with your journey by having somebody as an expert. Could be in your family, could be a chartered accountant, or could be an advisor, a mutual fund distributor. And then once you get comfortable, like I said, once you know what you're doing, today if you're going to a new place, obviously you'll go and ask for a tour guide to show you around, right? And then once you visit that place again, you don't need that tour guide. So yes, there is lot of products, not necessary all these products suit you. And like I said, avoid the noise, avoid the information overload, get an expert. So in the initial first 5-10 years, get into simpler products that you understand. Get into a vehicle which you know to drive, which you know if it breaks down, what is it that requires to get it going.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. I think due to paucity of time, we will not be able to take any more questions. I would like to sincerely thank our speaker, Mr. Shenoy, for agreeing, for accepting our invitation and being like conducting such a wonderful session. I am sure the audience must have so many practical takeaways to take from the session. Any concluding remarks that you would like to make?
Well, I hope the last 30 years was a good journey. Finance is something which is an ocean. You really need to experience it. It does not have any tangibles. The investment planning or investment products do not have features. So only when you burn your hands or you walk the journey is when you realize the product potential. Once again, thanks to Dutch Uncles for giving me this opportunity. And thank you once again.
Thank you so much, thank you so much, Mr. Shinoy, for conducting such a wonderful session. And I'm sure the audience must have so many practical takeaways. I would also thank our audience who have joined us from 4 different platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. You can refer to our previous videos on YouTube. Please check our YouTube channel, Dutch Uncles, for that. And with this, we come to an end of today's mentored session. Please allow me, your host, Abhinash, to say goodbye. I wish you a very happy weekend ahead. Thank you so much.